In this video, I'm going to cover the most common shooting problems and how to fix them. I'm Delta 9, and this is Johnny Tactical. All right, when it comes to diagnosing shooting problems, there's a lot of nuance, and I understand that, okay? So I don't want to get real into the weeds with that. So I'm going to cover some general topics and some ways to fix those, because I think those are the most common ones that you're most likely going to see. With that said, I'm a right-handed shooter. So I'm going to talk about righties. For lefties, you just do the opposite. Okay, so one of the most common ones is hitting low. In other words, low center. So if I was aiming here and my bullets are going here, or if I were aiming at the center of this this circle, this bullseye, and my rounds are going low, the most common problem for your rounds dropping low is anticipation. And what I mean by anticipation is your body is bracing for the explosion that is going off in your hands in front of your face. Your body's like, it's like flinching, it's getting ready for that explosion. And so when you flinch, it causes your rounds to drop. One way you can test that is with dummy rounds. Mix some dummy rounds, random order, or have a friend mix them in for you so you don't know what order they're in. And then when your gun goes click, if you watch the nose of your gun dip, you 100% are anticipating. We talked earlier in an earlier episode about letting recoil happen. You just have to understand that recoil is part of firing a gun. Yes, there is an explosion going off in front of your face, in between your two hands, and your body is like, it takes some getting used to. So if you have rounds going low center, it's anticipation. You're anticipating that recoil, or you're fighting that recoil by pushing back against it, which is going to drive your rounds low. And again, you can test that theory by having dummy rounds mixed into your magazine. And if when the gun goes click, if you watch the nose of your gun dip, that is your problem. And the way to fix that is dry fire. Dry fire, dry fire, dry fire. Dry firing will fix that. And the more shooting you do, the more you'll get used to that recoil happening. All right, one other cause of your bullets going low is peaking. So I am like a perfectionist by nature, so I always like to see where my bullets are going, and I want to know that they're going where I told them to, and so I peak. So what I ended up doing is I do this, bang, and I look, and I drop my gun every time I fire, and so every time I do that, I'm actually causing my rounds to go low by peaking. So if you're a peaker, you got to trust your sights. So stop worrying about what's going to happen, just worry about what is happening. Focus on your front sight. Put your sights on what you want to hit. You're going to be covering what you want to hit with your sights, and then trust your sights. Do your course of fire, and then check them after your gun's in the holster. So peaking is a big one. And then following through with that second sight picture. So we talked about an earlier episode where you press the trigger, you hold to the rear. As you recover from recoil, you release that trigger, and you're getting that second sight picture. Doing that will also help curb those rounds going low, if that's you. I know that I'm that way. The next thing is if you're a right-handed shooter, your rounds are going to tend to go low right. So if you take your target and bisect it, or even turn it into quarters, you're going to have 4 quarters or quadrants. But if you bisect it in half, we're going to just deal with the tendency for your rounds to go left. So for a righty, for your rounds to tend to go left, and they could be just left, they could be low left, but what could be happening, what most likely is happening, is you're over gripping with your strong hand. So for example, when I hold my gun, if I'm crushing it, if I'm squeezing as hard as I can, the gun tweaks to the left. The muzzle tweaks to the left, and I'm over gripping with my right hand. And so that also tells me that my support hand isn't doing a whole lot. So if your rounds are tending to go right, what you're going to want to do is increase the amount of pressure you're applying with your support hand and actually decrease the amount of pressure with your strong hand, your shooting hand. For a lefty, it's the opposite. For a lefty, your rounds might be tending to go to the right-hand side. And that, again, is going to be over-gripping. So when you squeeze, your muscles contract, it's going to curl everything to the opposite direction. So for righties, it's going to be on the left-hand side of the target. That's a problem that I had for a while. I still have it. It still creeps up every now and then, and I have to go, oh, shoot. Hey, make sure you're gripping more with your left hand. So think about it in terms of like maybe 60%, 70% with your left hand, your support hand, and 40, 30% with your right hand. And if you're like, oh, but Delta 9, if I don't hold my gun with a death grip, it's gonna go flying. Well, no, it won't. I'm just gonna show you that I can fire this gun with holding it with 2 fingers just like this. If I pull the trigger, I got only 2 fingers on the gun. That's it. Gun didn't go flying out of my hand. And this is a 357 SIG, which is a fairly powerful round. It didn't go flying out of my hand. I literally held it with 2 fingers and I pulled it with a 3rd. So you don't need a death grip on the gun. Okay, and the 3rd most common one is rounds are just everywhere. There's no pattern. They're not low left, they're not low center, they're not going in one particular area or grouping. And when you shoot, look at groups. So if you're shooting 3 or 5 rounds at a time, look at them as a group, not as an individual round. So the groups will tell you more about your shooting than any one round will. So if you got like the buckshot approach, like your rounds are just going everywhere, and maybe you notice it more with successive fire, like bang, 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 rapid fire. It could be a couple things, and the way to dial that down and to really tighten that group will be a few different steps we'll talk about in a second here. All right, and just the first place to start with that, if your bullets are going everywhere, the first place to start is your stance. So we talked about in an earlier episode, make sure you've got a good athletic stance, that your upper body's lean slightly forward to till your toes start to curl and grip the ground, and that's going to give you a good foundation. Then you're going to go into your grip. You want to make sure that as you present the firearm, you're high on the tang with your support hand, with your strong hand, and your support hand is high on the grip here. And remember, we want to rotate our thumb forward. We want to get as high on the grip as possible, high on the gun, to increase our leverage. And then the nutcracker grip. So as I marry my hands together and I rotate my support thumb forward and I push my gun out, or as I bring my sights to my eyes, I want that good nutcracker grip where I'm having side-to-side pressure on the gun. If you, for whatever reason, maybe your grip strength is really weak, you can easily increase your grip strength with a little bit of exercise with your gripping muscles, and sometimes that will help stabilize your gun. And if you find yourself like unable to control the gun, start with your stance, next go to your grip, and then your trigger press. So make sure that you're not slamming the trigger or slapping the trigger. You want to stay in contact with the trigger from the start to the finish when it goes bang, and then back to the reset. You never want to come off your trigger, you want to stay on it. Always stay in contact with your trigger, and if you have slapping can cause the gun to go everywhere. That's like your gangster stuff where it's like bap, 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 bap. And then you've got this asymmetrical pattern of bullets everywhere. So to tighten that down, you start with your stance, you move to your grip, you do all the things that we taught you to do in the earlier episodes, and that you're letting recoil happen, you're following through, and you're staying in contact with the trigger, no slapping. That should tighten your group up. If you're finding your rounds going everywhere, make sure you start with a good stance, good aggressive athletic stance. Bring your gun together at center line of your body, which induces the nutcracker grip. Bring your sights to your eyes, and I'm going to rotate my support thumb forward. Both my thumbs are pointed at the target. I press the trigger to the rear without disturbing my sights. I hold the trigger to the rear. I reset my sights. Release the trigger to reset. Press it to the rear, hold it, find my sights again, reset the trigger, find my sights, press it to the rear, hold it, reset my sights, reset my trigger, press it to the rear, reset my sights. That's my follow through right there. My trigger is still pressed to the rear, let it reset, do it again. If I follow those steps, yes, when you go faster, things are gonna get a little more difficult, but when you go slow, that's how you start. It's crawl, walk, run, crawl, walk, run. If I take my time, I do it by the numbers, good stance, good grip, smooth trigger press to the rear without disturbing my sights, front sight focus, press the trigger to the rear, gun goes bang, I hold the trigger to the rear, bring my sights back on target, release the trigger till it resets, press it again, and just keep doing that same pattern, and then your body's going to develop the memory that it needs, the muscle memory that it needs to do that at a faster rate, and you'll get there, you'll get there. So I got a nice group there. You can do the same thing. I'm going to have some targets available for download on my website, some targets that are going to help you dial in your trigger discipline, your sight picture. I'll also have a fun target there for like a challenge. It's something that you can take to the range with you, even if it's indoors or even if you're in a lane and you can't move around. These targets will be available on my website to help you build the skills that you need to become a better shooter. I hope you found these videos helpful. I hope they built your confidence. I hope they built your competence. And if you appreciate these videos, please like them, share them, and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you haven't, go check out my website. Got a ton of resources there for you. And I really appreciate you being with me through this series. I'm Delta 9, and this is Johnny Tactical.